Kids who are raised with screens have a 10 to 15% reduction in empathy. It's an economic cost to have children, not an economic gain. If anybody thinks that climate change isn't real, go talk to insurance agencies.
That's really kind of wasted. It's only because we fear our fellow man.
We're engineered to be in community, and we've created this separation.
So now 88 hours of fasting, you got into sourdough making. I actually tried sourdough making. It comes alive and then you got to keep it alive and you got to use it. But I could get the starter. I seem to be great with starter. I mean, letting things mold and fester seems to be I have a knack for. But I could never get my bread to actually rise.
And your starter wasn't strong enough.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
I see.
And it took a while. I almost gave up. I started in October, my starter, got it off of Amazon, got it going, made bread, and it was flat. It was flavorful, but it wasn't like,
same.
There was nothing,
A thick tortilla is what mine looked like.
And well, it was better than that. But I was putting a lot of inclusions in, which I wouldn't recommend at the beginning.
Fruit. Like you're already adding stuff? Okay. All right.
Yeah. So, well, I have two. One with inclusions and one that's just pure sourdough. But I get great lift.
Now, you got so into it that you had to test, of course, your own products. That's important. You live on your own supply.
I'll tell you what, the bread is so good. And when it comes out and you're slicing it and you just go, maybe just another slice, a little olive oil, a little balsamic vinegar. And I'll tell you what, man, this kid was chowing down. And I just went, okay, let's do a little reset. So that's why I did the fast.
Now, have you ever fasted for?
Yeah, I fasted
4
before.
days before.
I think I did it once before. I think I did a 4-day. Usually if I'm going to do a fast, it's 24 or 48, some element of that. And, one of my areas of focus, so I've got an oncology startup. And our molecule goes after the metabolic engine of cancer cells and targets it. And so Apophagy is just like there's nothing in any of the science-backed evidence that doing a fast doesn't make perfect sense for those of us that are older. And
let me introduce you, Charlie, because we're going to dive right into that. So today's guest is Charlie Sheppard, professor of leadership, founder of WorldBridge University, biotech co-founder, software developer, and inventor. A father first, Charlie blends decades of experience into behavioral science, systems thinking, executive coaching, and biotech innovation to help people from relative drama to professional leadership. He's the author of Get Off the Fence and the best-selling Save Your Drama for Your Mama. And as co-founder of Arjuna Therapeutics, he's working on cutting-edge cancer therapies. Now, as I understand, as I looked into sort of this cutting-edge cancer solution, cancer, as it's growing, it emits what is called ROS, relative oxygen.
Reactive oxygen species.
Oxygen species.
So it becomes a high ROS. So the thing to think about, normal cell is over here. It's kind of running cool, normal. And a cancer cell over here, it's running hot. And because it's running hot, it's got two.
Given this context, I almost saw it's like it's emitting CO2.
Yeah,
so it can't breathe.
It's emitting high levels of ROS, but it has like two cooling systems inside of it to keep it so that it doesn't get too hot. So it's running hot. It's right near the edge of dying, but because of these antioxidant systems that are actually in the cancer cell, it doesn't go over the edge. So it's growing rapidly, but not growing out of control, so it dies. So our molecule actually
without the antioxidants, it would be polluting. I mean, it's basically giving itself.
Die.
It's cancer is giving cancer to itself, right?
What we do is we go in, we're a catalyst, and we go on in, and this is what makes our molecule unique. Almost all the medicine out there is going after some type of mutation, right? There's a mutation in the cancer cells, so we're going to target that mutation. Because killing cancer cells is easy. Killing only cancer cells is very, very hard. Okay? So you can
wipe out everything.
You can wipe out everything. And that's why chemo and all the side effects. the reason that we don't have a drug like we do in HIV, so the cocktail of drugs that were orthogonal, they would go in, basically they're attacking different avenues of the HIV. You could take a cocktail of those drugs. People are living with HIV for the rest of their lives. They're going to die of something else. So that's not the case in cancer, and especially in aggressive cancers, because what happens is you hit it with radiation or you hit it with some of these harder drugs. The cancer cells that live actually have resistance to that. The ones that are left kind of went,
Right.
They said, sorry, we're able to exist inside of that environment. So those are the ones that left. So they grow back aggressively. Now you come in with that same radiation or that same chemo or that same even targeted an ADC. And because it's targeting a mutation, at some point in time, every cancer treatment fails, pretty much because the cancers mutate to it, which is why you have stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, and different interventions that are happening at every one of those stages. We happen to exist at the metabolic engine underneath all solid tumor cancer cells. So when they become aggressive, that's our target.
Because it's basically aggressive. It's killing itself. So
yeah, so we're letting cancer kill itself, which is way it should be doing. We're just giving it that boost over the finish line that it needs to create the apoptosis.
Which I learned means kill cancer cells.
Self-program. Yeah. Apoptosis is just the cancer cells dying. It's got a program. All cells die at some point in time. There isn't a single cell inside of you that was there 20 years ago.
Gotcha.
Every cell in your body is new. And so we're constantly regenerating and constantly kind of harvesting that waste product, and the body's very efficient at doing it. When it's not, that creates the apoptosis. And that's the natural, one of the benefits of a fast is the apophagy. It just helps them go along.
That's part of the fast. You're killing yourself off quicker, which is
if there's any kind of cells that are kind of on the borderline, the body's just going to go, oh, we don't need to eat. We're not going to eat the food you're giving us. We're going to eat the fat in your body.
Now, what listeners need to know is when we talk about this fast, Charlie just told me before this that he just ended, like right as this call started, he's ending almost 4 days of fasting. So if Charlie faints 15 minutes into this, you'll know it's his body's partially going through apoptosis.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm in good shape. I've had some food, so food right
So
now.
what's flavor like after 4 days of not eating?
Oh my gosh. The first thing I had was just a cup of chicken bone broth. It might have been the best chicken bone broth I've ever had.
Is that what you were craving for 4 days?
Well, it's a good way to break a fast.
Okay.
So it's just
that's the easing into it. Easing
into it. I had a hard-boiled egg with salt. Oh my God, it was amazing.
So what did you crave? I mean, that had to keep you up at night at some time. I just can't think. 24 hours for me, and I'm at the end. I'm just like,
I had pictures inside of my mind of some fresh sliced sourdough bread.
What you're trying to avoid, what got you here, you're craving more of that.
I think there were little things that would flash in my mind, and my son's home from college, and last night he just came home and he goes, "What's for dinner?" And I go, "You're going out for dinner," because when I make food, I'm done. I go, "Here."
If you even smell food, you're done.
Here's the credit card. So he went to
an
amazing Mexican restaurant. So he got to go have some family comfort food at this one restaurant. Wonderful. Yeah, I needed to wait. So I'm easing back into nutrition. That's why contrast is huge, right? As humans, we learn and experience so much through the contrast. And so the appreciation of like an egg or the appreciation of just chicken bone broth, I have definitely a sensory appreciation of it.
I've never gone more than 24 hours, and I love a salt and egg. It's fantastic. So you don't have to go to such extremes to find appreciation, but I am glad that it's there. So let's dive in. You said your son just got home. He's young, and I think this topic is relevant because you're familiar with, I think that age range, college student age group is interesting. Your book, as it dives in, you basically allude to the fact, this is sitting on the fence, that there's about 10% of people who get it. They're actively engaged in assisting in climate change. There's about 10% who actively are not. They're really doing different. But then this 80% that sits in the middle, many are like, oh yeah, it sounds good, and they float around, but they are not actively engaged.
Yep.
So give us a little sense of why you think that 80% exists.
That's a really good question. Societally, we've become more separated. And so this kind of gets back to the core of the core. We've become more separated. We're more through electronic devices. That whole generation, well, very aware of the situation, also has inherent separation. And you and I grew up, we didn't have a cell phone to interact, and they all did. Even their school system is now educationally using screens. And so this creates a certain amount of disconnect from core human capabilities. One of the first things I did is I put my kids into the dirt as much as I could. It's like, let's blow something up. Let's build a fire. Let's shoot something with a gun. Let's go fix a car. Let's drive a boat. Let's go camping. They learned chemistry or they learned biology through fishing. How do you move into the world and actually interact with it? I grew up in an era where you went to the grocery store to build your food. My kids have grown up in the era where you actually call Uber Eats, right?
For a $5 coffee, they're going to pay $10 delivery fee.
Yeah.
Right?
If I go back 3 generations from myself, I've got a autobiography of my great uncle that was borrowing his great uncle's Civil War musket at age 11 to kill a squirrel to feed the family. Right. So my kids at age 11 were not going out in the backyard and shooting squirrels with a Civil War musket.
So this long 4-day fasting seems to be generational.
I think the key is that we've moved further away societally from natural systems. The family system, in many ways, was to survive. You had more kids in order to work the farm, but you needed a tribe to actually make it. We were agrarian, but it also puts your hands into the dirt, or you were a rancher. We had things that were based more in natural systems. And now I took a piece of code that probably took me 6 months of back and forth doing wireframes and everything else with my programming team in India. I threw all the wireframes in a Claude code, and I had the same tool built and maybe 3 or 4 iterations. That's an extraordinary throughput, and it's slightly addictive, right? That I can actually generate and create something that quickly. So I understand the addiction of the screen. I'm glad that my nervous system had the early years to not have it be adopted. If you watch kids watching a movie today, they are usually on their phone watching the movie. They're double screening, not one screening.
Well, I even saw there's a little girl the other day where we play basketball, and she is playing a game on her iPad while watching a movie, while having a conversation with me. And I'm just like, what is going on?
So the good news is I've been able to have my nervous system develop before that. Kids who are raised with screens have a 10 to 15% reduction in empathy. And Joseph, I got to tell you, those are the people that are going to take care of us going forward.
Or at least we'll know who's not going to take care of us when we get older. Right?
So, weaving this back to the question, the family systems and the infrastructures that used to be in place are no longer there as much for creating community. Right now, the economic risk is so great that a lot of times what's happening is we see what the Kardashians' lifestyle is. We see what an athlete's lifestyle is. They popularize it. An influencer only has one function, is putting buyers and sellers to go together more efficiently. Sport teams exist because advertisers are paying for it because they want our eyeballs to pay attention to it. The internet is putting buyers and sellers together more efficiently. Meta ads, Facebook, Google. Now, it's an economic cost to have children, not an economic gain. And my father, just as an example, I grew up in San Mateo, California. So he was right out of the Navy, 4 kids, wife that didn't work. And he bought a house in San Mateo. That's this gorgeous home, but he could afford it. He could go out of the Navy with an entry-level job and buy a house in San Mateo with 4 kids. Right now, you have to be a NVIDIA stockholder or bought Bitcoin, whatever, 10 years ago.
To even rent a house.
Yeah, to go into
San
those.
Mateo.
Yeah, and so it's the most expensive county in the world right now. because Atherton's there, Menlo's there, but the most amount of millionaires are there. If you think of, whether it's Apple, whether it's Cisco, whether it's Genentech, right? So much wealth has generated there that has become very, very expensive. My kids are sitting there going, I can't take an entry-level salary. My daughter graduated from UCLA, and she's going, I can't live in the Bay Area on this. Now she is, but she goes, I can't start out by buying a house. So instead of worrying about climate, people are worried about how am I going to pay? How am I going to build enough wealth? So there's an organization they're genius level marketers, and I refer to them as Earth's marketing agency, and it's called Potential Energy Coalition. And they really figure out what messages, how do we get this to be the number one political? Because in the last election, I think it was the 4th most important for Democrats, and it was the 13th most important for Republicans. So either case, it's not rising to the level of influence on our political system.
What you're talking about is climate change.
Because that's so far out there in the future. Now, if you happen to own a home in a high fire risk area, you're feeling it because of insurance rates. If anybody thinks that climate change isn't real, go talk to insurance agencies.
I'm currently in the Northwest. They've had record number of fires happening all over the Northwest. They just keep increasing. I've been hiking here over the last 6 years, and every time we come, it just seems like it's nothing but trying to avoid fires. So it continuously comes up as a constant theme that slowly encroaches. Do you think there's a rebranding maybe that is needed? For instance,
completely.
If you ask any conservative, they will immediately, like the word climate change, the word
Climate's
global
always
warming.
changing.
Right, exactly. So these have become very polarized, very political terms that you just say them and immediately there's no conversation. Whereas I think sometimes I was like, what if there was a rebranding kind of like stuff your kids breathe, or, don't take my air. You're not taking my air. Maybe all of a sudden this would become a more involved in this 80%.
Yeah, if you're conservative, it's in the word. Conserve. I think it was Al Gore that said, the atmosphere is not your free sewer. We've cleaned up rivers before, and we fixed the ozone. It has to be a political will. There's an interesting organization that's called the Grand Bargain. And what they've actually pointed out is that Republicans stay in power by demonizing the Democrats, and the Democrats stay in power by demonizing the Republicans.
Exactly.
And he goes, and there's actually, I think it's either 17 or 19 policies that 80 to 90% of Americans would agree to. And so they call it the Grand Bargain. It doesn't matter whether you're right or left. It's like, what are the things that 80 to
red
90?
herring, right? Like abortion, gun control. These are too polarizing.
It's easy. And then you can sit there and get outraged. So the human nervous system loves outrage. By the way, if you can get somebody into the state of outrage, they're not in the higher cognitive center, which makes them great for selling advertising. All you have to do is look at the news pundit shows. If you've got somebody representing the right and somebody representing the left, right? Have they ever changed the other person's opinion? No.
I can't say I watch them.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm just
but
saying.
I assume not. No, they wouldn't have much of a show.
Here's the sound energy that they do. It's just the generation of drama. It's like, and another thing, I've got this point of view, right, left. And the sound energy is the exact same as watching the World Wrestling Federation conversations. It's no different. It's drama. It's meant to be addictive. It gets people into outrage.
It's their sport of choice.
And they hook my eyeballs with it. And whether it's Real Housewives or the Manosphere, we're doing outrage. We're selling it and packaging it as entertainment. And it takes people out of the higher cognitive center. So it also keeps people from having presence with other individuals. So to get back to it, this 80% is trying to survive. And for the most part, most people feel, I don't have anything I can do, right? This is above my pay grade. I just think it's one of the issues that you should at least do your own research on to come up with a point of view. And that's why I wrote the book, because I didn't have it. I was talking to somebody with climate change denier. I have children, and someday they're going to have children, and the world that they're inheriting is very different. I went to University at UC Davis undergrad in agricultural economics, so I have a lot of friends that own wineries. They can't afford the fire insurance. It's not just fire, it's flood, it's hurricane. The storms are more fierce. The rains are coming in greater amounts. The United States had this amazing economic advantage in that we had waterways to do transport. all through basically the East and the Midwest. It's extraordinary. But you look around the world, we ship to ports. Most of the cities of the world that exist today are near a river or an ocean. And so if we start to influence this, you're just saying goodbye to infrastructure. You're going to say goodbye to airports. There's a lot of global infrastructure that's just going to go, bonsoir. Some people are working on a molecule that you can drop into water that allows even sunlight to separate the hydrogen from the oxygen. So we might have a clean, ongoing source of energy. So there's science that's coming. I think that the new nuclear reactors are needed. The lack of advancement in nuclear is just
Kind of the fusion front, you mean?
yeah. Well, then there's also
produce quite a
fusion.
bit.
There's fusion and fission coming. It's just will it come fast enough and renewable, right?
Let's jump into that because we have the Paris Accords. We have China, who finally jumped in and agreed in the Paris Accords in 2016, followed by India 2016. In 2025, President Trump left took the U.S. and we left the Paris Accords, which was an effort to basically drop the global temperature by 2 degrees Celsius. And it has in 2024, it actually showed we slowly decrease the temperature. However, China does about 3 times the amount of emitting CO2 than the U.S., India being number 3. So these are our largest pollutants.
Emitters.
They've tried to put various things together. I know they came out with sort of a cap plan, but every country, everyone has looked through various things. And the U.S. has put forward 2 different plans. They said, all right, we can either let's do a cap and trade, or we can do a carbon tax. So these are, I think what you referred to in your book, externalities. So here we are, we're consuming a lot of products that have an externality. That externality is something of which the market currently does not fix, meaning it creates a cost and it's not built into the price. So by creating either this tax or this cap and trade, you'd create a tax of which then the government can use this money to then attempt to do this. But this would be the real cost. So the question is, I see that there's 10% that are very into this, and they are extreme. They are like what you're talking about. No more airplane. We basically all use sailboats. They're very extreme. And oftentimes I'm just like, that's just not feasible. The reality is we drive cars, fossil fuels, fuel everything on this globe. It's just not a reality. Now, if we look at Texas versus California, we can see 2 different, very political environments that look at this on a political stage 2 different ways. Here's what's funny. In Texas, I live in Texas, but they don't say clean energy. It's renewable energy. So that's how polarized these words are, right? So in Texas, you have to say renewable energy, and they're now the country's largest producers of renewable energy. They now outbeat Texas by solar. But in Texas, what they do is they say, what works? Let's just do it big. And so they do wind everywhere. They do solar everywhere. We still have a lot of coal plants, but there's been no new coal plants. Or in California, they take it, even though they're now producing less, they're more innovative, right? So in California, you find so many variations of sources of producing different sources of power. And so there's 2 different ways, but again, both are on a mission to create this. So we're left still with that 80% who are like, listen, reality is we have to move forward. So what is going to be the compromise that brings this 80%? What is going to be something that eventually says, for instance, if you tell me I can't fly in a plane, you're not going to get a lot of people
Support
behind it. If you tell me you're going to have to walk everywhere, it's not going to be there. So how do we bring 80% and maybe even increase it from 10 to 20? How do we even do that? What are those policy changes we're going to need to do in order to make this move?
I did the math on my own life: housing, food production, jet fuel, and I fly business class, right? I went back through and I put it all into a carbon calculator. And had I paid the actual cost of removing, not offsets, but I mean actual removing that from the atmosphere using today's technology, I would have to write a check for my family of $1 million.
For one flight?
No. For
For
my
your
lifetime.
flights. Okay.
No, for
Ah,
my
gotcha.
lifetime
Okay.
of all my
Gotcha.
carbon
Gotcha.
use, for my family's carbon use, right?
That's a good example. So an average family may owe,
$1 million
$1 million
at today's
in
technology
today's
of
time.
of extraction. I'm going to tell you right now, that would hurt me if I had to write that check,
Right.
or if I had to amortize it throughout time, right? Now,
In other words, if we keep doing damage and you don't start
yeah.
addressing it somehow, it starts to accrue interest.
So one, people need to be aware of that. I think that on the other side of it, that's given what we have in the way of technologies. So say you and I had to pay for that. We know that we can drop it down to 10%. So if I had to take out a loan for $100,000, a lot easier for me to afford, kind of like to put the infrastructure in place to remove the carbon and everything else. Now, interestingly, we made this bet after World War II, a bet at enhancing our military industrial complex to the degree that we could have actually been zero carbon emissions in the United States. If we would have taken the same funding that we put into nuclear bombs, aircraft carriers, everything else. Now, we did that for good intent, right? The intent was, we have to keep Russia from actually, how do we keep this? But there was a small, like if you think about it, we have these two oceans and two neighbors, unless we're trying to invade Canada. For the most part, the United States happens to have this amazing capacity. Like we don't have what Europe has, like, here's Russia or France and England or Germany. And this exists for us. So we've got these nice people up north in Canada, and the economy in Mexico is working its way out of, Now, I'm not suggesting that being the global policeman was a bad idea. There's a lot of economic gains to keep the shipping lanes open, et cetera. And we spent $1 trillion. That's in 1990 money. So we invested in something that inherently is destructive to the environment. All of that is fundamentally destructive. The climate change stuff, like from 1960, so this is all happening on my watch, in my lifetime. From 1960 to 1990, I was oblivious. I was mainly focused on creating a career, providing for my family. And I live in Marin County, man.
It was down here at 13 on priorities.
Yeah, I've got this beautiful lagoon out there. It's everything else. But it really started to happen. And I think this is the local thing. And these are not natural disasters, but unnatural disasters. There was 2 or 3 summers where we couldn't go outside in the summer in California because the fires were putting so much debris
Oregon had the
in
same thing.
Yeah. And this is the visceral wake-up call, at least for me. Not only was it talking to somebody who was a climate change denier, but I understand leadership. I understand influence. I support this potential energy coalition. They want to get this to be the number one issue for everybody on the planet. And they're marketers. These guys are masters. This is taking the guy that was a strategist for Coca-Cola and building the Coca-Cola brand, and he's building the brand for climate change. And then when it comes time to vote, at least around climate change, I would suggest that you vote for somebody that thinks about it, cares about it, from like what you're saying is a practical way, right? What are the ways? This is why I love the grand bargain. I would recommend anybody to go explore it. I just think the word is United States, not the red states, not the blue states. It isn't that. It's the United States.
Divided.
It's just such a sad state of affairs that we're using polarization.
I mean, are you really talking to that 10% though? I mean, if they're going to go through the effort of like, here's who I'll vote for. I mean, don't they already have that engaged? Like, how are you really trying to bring in that other group that has to find it? And hasn't the previous marketing been fear? And I know you talked about this between two political parties trying to bring up their base. They bring fear, but hasn't this whole message really been about fear? I know there was a recent study done where 100 of the predictions that were going to be devastating in regards to climate change have not happened, and they were supposed to happen by 2025. So now this works against us, where you even have teens and you have lots of people who are seeing this saying like, oh, well, I don't know what's really going to happen, but none of that happens. But it's always kind of this fear. Should there be another marketing? Because it has not worked. Let's just say everyone who's put marketing effort into it, it didn't work. It fell on its face. And then there was even a scandal in 2000. That goes back to my debate days, right? There was a scandal of the emails that got released where a lot of experts were saying, exclude all this, exclude all this. What's the rebranding or the remarketing really have to do to bring this out? Instead of fear mongering and saying like the planet is going to, I think you bring up the analogy of a spaceship. But instead of this spaceship that has limited resources, I mean, we're going to have to come up with a new way to address bringing something on, because even as countries are isolated, it's going to be hard to compete. China is doing more solar. They're doing more renewable energy, but they're still popping up lots of fuel plants. So there's fossil fuel plants popping up all over in China.
And they're putting up amazing amounts of nuclear energy. Right. So they're aware partly because their environment's taken a hit. So they're realizing it. Look, I love the democratic political system in the United States. There's a certain level of inefficiency in it. Like, we can't build one train in California. We can't build one high-speed rail. If you ever go to Japan, you're going,
exactly.
Wait a minute, we can't do this. And so what is that infrastructure that allows the insect to stop progress? Here's the thing that I would suggest. And I don't think it's about climate. I think it's about connection. So I think that we have a loss of human-to-human connection. I think it's about love and connectivity. And so when we don't have love your neighbor, like you want to look at climate change disaster, go to Eastern Ukraine, right? The Russian people really are not benefiting. The Ukrainian people are not benefiting. So Putin has actually destroyed, in many ways, the Russian economy. He's destroyed the goodwill.
He set them back more than 30 years.
If you could leave Russia, you did. I would have done the same choice. I have economic flexibility. I would have chosen flexibility. But here's the counterexample from a climate change. With everybody potentially having a robot or two, potentially if a robot can work at doing housing, the ability to have what my dad had coming out of World War II may come back to society. We may be able to export that everywhere else because we have a huge infrastructure and a wealth here in the United States, which is extraordinary. We have housing, we have food production. If a robot is driving the truck from the farm producer to me and it's an electric vehicle and it's renewable, the cost goes down extraordinary. Like a huge part of the U.S. economy is actually just transportation and moving things. And then it's transaction costs, right? If you look at the reason why Uber was so successful, or a lot of companies that were disruptive, is they put buyers and sellers together, transportation more effectively. And we can put buyers and sellers. The next stage will be somebody's going to come up with a blockchain version of that, where we get rid of the percentage that Visa gets inside of that whole ecosystem. And now Uber is taking more than the driver, right? They have a monopolistic engine in place. Well, somebody's going to disrupt their monopolistic engine and come along with some type of a blockchain way that if you were, if I was your driver, you would just send me a certain amount of value, I would get it. Now I got the government out of the system from the trust of the currency. I've got my bank. The largest companies, we did this research and it was interesting as far as asset classes. Something like in the world, if you take pharmaceuticals, something like 3 trillion in medical, 3 trillion in manufacturing, 3 trillion in housing. It's a factor of 3 financial services. It's 10 trillion. So think about that. Like with medical care, I get something. Housing, I get something. With financial services, right? Taking up 10 trillion or 3x of those other industries, the largest industry in the world is financial services. We've got to raise money for getting our products to get Arjuna launched, right? We're out there raising capital. And so I understand the value of financial services. I don't want to knock it. Other than betting in the right thing, nothing new got created. It's not like, ooh, look at that new bank down the road. So I think there's a disproportional value being created to transaction.
You bring up a point of nuances that seem unrelated. But if we were to have, let's say, some of that financing to pay for this externality, and we start a tax now, things like financial institutions, things like our bread, obviously when we drive, things that you would not think relate, because everything basically is extracted. There's production in anything. And even if you have the tax on the company, it ends up making itself down to the consumer, as you well know. So the consumer in almost everything is going to have
pay for it.
This tax, which all of a sudden is going to leave people to say, okay, well now we see gas already from this crazy war we've started in Iran. We see fuel here in Oregon, it's doubled from the last time I was here. That would immediately turn a lot of people off from wanting to support something. And then they live in an environment where they really get to say, oh, this is my great life. Like, so long as I get my phone, I have 5G, I can put a pizza in the microwave and hit a button and it runs. I can drive anywhere and my heating goes, they're all going to be happy. If we look at the top things that are emitters, electricity and heat production are the top.
Yep.
And there's transportation. And then manufacturing, after that, it's buildings, which of course is then heating. So that's like your business offices. But then it goes to agriculture and then the other small like mechanical or chemical and things like that. So the top emitter is just people, like they could cut electrical costs if they wanted. They could live a few degrees lower, but they don't. So does that mean we're only tolerant of this so long as it doesn't change my lifestyle? And that's more at the heart. I know you kind of answered my question before to say love, but we keep starting wars. So I don't know if love's any easier to get than people changing their mind on climate change.
You've got to get human presence in place and to be able to be present with each other. I think you have to care about your neighbor and you have to care about the future, right? So it's not just caring about now. I think that pricing should be baked into everything that we do. There's so much inefficiency in government right now. This is one of the things that when I think about the well-intended, it was poorly executed, but the thought process of going, okay, how much infrastructure do we have in place? I did a remodel in my house and the amount of effort that went into approvals. And it was literally an 8-year battle with this town. I'm not joking. It was like 8 years with the fire department, the town, and everything else to remodel a house. We did an addition. There's so much infrastructure costs in the United States, whether it's legal, whether it's oversight, whether it's all of this. That infrastructure cost is so high, that's why we actually shipped out manufacturing. We can manufacture somewhere else where they don't have that overhead of the infrastructure costs. This is why we've lost our manufacturing base. And if we can bring it back using robotics and other things, I think we can afford the tax so long as we grow the GNP of the country. And right now, the payers of everything is the middle class, right? If you look at the wealth inequality, the way that we've organized, it's never been this skewed before. That's also creating a huge part of the fear of the inequality. If the system's unfair, people don't want to pay, right? We've lost trust in the organization. You look at the government system of Republicans and Democrats, and they just battle it.
Let's even say they did come together and make some sense finally. These Republicrats say, all right, we're going to do this. Wouldn't there be leakage? I mean, for exactly like you talked about. So the U.S. addresses it. We have a tax that we become accustomed to. We just are used to having this tax built in, so it's part of the price. So it's not inflationary as much as it is an increase in the price level. But then all of a sudden there's this leakage where we find out like, okay, well, there's all these other things we could have made elsewhere. And because we have them elsewhere, that leakage is really some other country not holding to that standard and are now making it cheaper because they don't have this tax. So yes, our GNP goes up because we're producing more, we're making more profit, but the whole point of it is that it's going down. And China would be just the victim. I do like this. One of your books, you talk about this triangle of rescuer, victim, and visionary, adversary.
Adversary.
And so I think of now China would start pushing back because right now they're not meeting their requirements, but they are doing more reporting, which is pretty amazing to get India and China to be openly reporting on their emissions. But they would for sure look the other way for anything if they can now say, okay, we are the manufacturing powerhouse. We want to maintain that. And if we can increase it for anyone, we'll look the other way for a lot of these just to produce stuff and sell it cheaper overseas.
This is where partnerships with the rest of the world matter and having quality partnerships. As far as climate change is concerned, it doesn't see the difference between the United States and Canada. So you bring up an important point. The air is going everywhere. The biggest risk factor that I'm worried about is the ocean. If the ocean dies, it's game over. Most of our oxygen is generated by phytoplankton, and we're losing the phytoplankton. I don't want to be scaring people, but I'll just use an analysis. Stuff happens, and then there's a heart attack. The heart attack didn't happen, but the effect of the heart attack happened almost immediately.
Yeah, I did find one stat interesting in your book. 90%, as you say, 90% of mammals today are either people, our pets, or our food.
Yeah.
That's pretty
crazy. Yeah, we've already dominated. We've dominated the world. So there's a certain responsibility for it. It's either us humans or our pets or our food is all of it. So 10% make up the birds that you see, the elephants, the tigers. We are the dominant animal or the animals that we use to eat. So there's a lot of people on the planet, and more than we've ever had before. I think systems thinking needs to be taught, because a lot of these solutions or a lot of the questions that you're asking are very complex. I am an optimist. I do believe that what we're doing now with artificial intelligence and technologies, I think that we can generate new sources of renewable power. I couldn't have imagined 20 years ago having all my energy needs coming from my roof and my power wall. Right. So now the other side of it is I could afford that. That's where government comes into place, which is, okay, what do we do to offer rebates? What do we do to help accelerate the transition? Everything that we did with Tesla, as far as it's like having a new car company is extraordinary. And then what do you do to actually put those things into place? I do think, and hopefully artificial intelligence, and this is the optimist in me, can take a lot of the governmental oversight that's in many ways inefficient. So how do we reduce? Like we pay, the retirements of individuals that are in governments are extraordinary. They're the last people that actually have retirements along those lines.
Legitimate retirements, yeah.
Yeah. Now, maybe they didn't get paid as much and they didn't have the capital appreciation and everything else, but there's a lot of people in government. Here's my thing. And this is where the evolution of the human spirit comes into play. If some alien could come down and say, hey, we've got a spiritual evolution, everybody's hearts open up, and we no longer need that military industrial complex, the 1.5 trillion. If I could flip that manufacturing capacity all to climate, and this is the thing that's interesting. If we could manufacture the carbon extraction, we actually could go out there and if we flipped in a day for 1 year, carbon extraction, all the manufacturing capacity of the world, we could start extracting the carbon. So I'm hopeful that we'll figure out the carbon extraction. It's not cost effective right now. We've got to figure out ways of doing it. And I really believe that if we aggregated it on everything, that it would at least put a true cost. So maybe I wouldn't fly business class because the cost of flying business class, like it would inform. There's no way to legislate anything anymore. There's just a cost of what did it take to put the carbon into the atmosphere. It's a level of responsibility, I think, and this is the Potential Energy Coalition's mission, is how do you get all 8 billion people to have this as an issue?
Getting the consumer involved.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we're pushing up towards 9 billion now. But now there's a couple of interesting things that you bring up. One of them is this whole idea if we were to take our defense budget, but that even goes down to our own homes, right? We have doors, we have locks, we have security systems. Every household, we have car locks. We have an entire industry built around this security, right? That is pretend security, and it's all for the same purpose that it's like, well, it's really kind of wasted. It's only because we fear our fellow man that we have all this, so we could lose them. But then there's the other side of it that is, all right, the government has this money. Are they the most efficient with it? We've been talking about Trump's about to, by executive order, about to undo the fuel excise tax that's federal. And everyone's like, oh, that was put in and did this to pay for the roads, and now it's not there. Why are we still being taxed, right? So there is the fact that the government really, it just goes to the general fund. It doesn't go to specific stuff. So now we have to say, all right, well, that would be taxing the consumer. So let's just say that consumers do get taxed. But one comparison I would like to put out there is that Japan does not export any of its old microchips. I didn't know this till I was in Tokyo this last trip. And they don't export any of it. You have to pay a deposit. So if you buy a phone, you buy a computer, you have to pay a deposit. And upon being done with your laptop, you have an old laptop, it's 10 years old, and you get rid of it. That's where it goes. But what it does, it creates a fund because now there's this deposit tax floating around. And so companies have popped up in the business of taking all your old electronics, and they recycle almost 100% of all of their electrical components. One of the few countries that do, and it's funny because I'm in Oregon. Oregon, I grew up here, and we would, as kids, go around and we'd pick up soda bottles, these little aluminum cans. And I think you get 10 cents now. Then we only got 5 cents. You get 5 cents a can, you crush them up, and that paid for the externality of these cans that would be littered all over the road. You'd pick them up, and so you'd get the deposit. But that kind of is the next piece, that if everybody were to take this on, there would be money there in, say, a carbon credit type world where there would be money available all of a sudden for a lot of new innovative companies to now say, all right, well, can you find a great way to really offset or bring in consumer, that there would actually be this money out there that is available for companies to try to create something. So very interesting points, but the last one you ended on is that our population is now pushing nearly 9 billion. But it's soon to be decreasing over the next 30 years. China's already shrinking by 650,000 people. Russia shrunk by, not including those who have senselessly been thrown in the meat slaughter in Ukraine, but they've been shrinking by 450. I read a thing that actual Japanese have shrunk by 1 million, but the population's closer to 450,000. It went down. So as population starts to go down, how much of a need are we still going to have? Is that going to help this overall problem? And basically, these are these 2 points that start to come together, is that population shrinking while we need temperature to go down.
When I was a kid, my dad said, and it was always an existential question, he goes, if I knew about population increase, I wouldn't have had you two. He had 4 kids. He had my older brother and sister, and then he had me and my
Well, that was
sister.
a scare tactic back in the 60s, right? Zero population growth. And at that time, it was like, stop having babies. They're going to eat all of our resources. We won't be able to have enough food.
So I think a lot of people look at population going down. There's a certain amount of fear inside of that, which is one of the engines of the United States growth is we grew in people, right? In the United States anyway, we created an environment and a culture, and no wars on our country since a long time ago. So it's attractive enough that the United States, it's not as big of an issue because for whatever reason, our society is such. Now, on the other side of it, the university where I've been a professor, it's all gone to virtual right now. We were the fastest growing MBA program in the world because people love coming to San Francisco. We get international students, but between COVID and then the current administration, we're not as attractive. No interest right now. Nobody wants to come here. So it's like, so I feel that I have the direct experience of the choice.
Demand shrinking based on people, headcount.
So let's get back to the question about population decline. I think there's 2 ways to approach life. And one of them is a consumer and the other one is a creator. A huge part of what we think of as the United States economy is based on consumption, right? So we consume. You'd want to have a large population, right? Because it's based upon consumption, right? So you need that to keep that engine flowing. If you're really into creating versus consuming, you definitely want to have a market for whatever you're creating. You got to think about what it is that you're going to have value. But I think this is where the promise of robotics and AI and my hope for the growth of the future is that we'll be able to put things in place where housing isn't out of reach of most people going forward. Healthcare isn't out of reach. There is so much inefficiency inside of the country. I think that there's huge advantages that we can take if we can actually mitigate with that inefficiency. The reason that we exist, like if you put one human being in the forest, it's food. But if you put 10 of us in the forest, we're an apex predator. right? So we're engineered to be in community, and we've created this separation. And so I really believe that it comes back to this idea of, even if we have the population shrinkage, how do we come together as communities, and how do we value innate creativity? I published my first children's novel on Kickstarter. I was teaching my kids stories and everything. So it's a Kickstarter.
Wait, this isn't like a fear mongering. The earth will end.
No, it's called The Path of Light. It's called The Path of Light. And it's to help kids fall asleep, right? I would tell these stories. I traveled a lot in my consulting practice. I would be out there traveling on the road. I recorded all these stories. I found them again. I went, oh, I'm going to create a book series. I'm not using traditional publishing. I'm going to do it as a Kickstarter, hopefully create a community. Then I'm going to have a web funnel on my own. If I got 50 people doing a review of the book, then I can start running Amazon ads directly. And if I run Amazon ads, I'm putting buyers and sellers together. But the fun part was being creative. Again, I put it on Claude Code. And we're in a society where my parents had 4 kids. I had 2. And I had them later in life. I believe that the most important thing we can do societally as a country is to create an environment where people want to be here. How do we not make it exclusionary? I think 3 or 4 years ago, I went to Japan for the first time. I didn't see a piece of trash on the street. I didn't see a single homeless person. I didn't, but everybody took care of their own, and everybody was super thoughtful. Again, I'm not a cultural anthropologist on that particular culture, but it seemed like there was a little bit more kindness that was happening inside of the environment. If we have fewer people and everybody's kinder,
could be a good thing.
I think this could be a heaven on earth. I actually believe that we have the potential of elevating our own human growth to a place where if we could actually see everybody across from us as a human being worthy of love and respect and kindness and care and taking care of each other, that would be amazing. One of the things I appreciate about your podcast, Joseph, and all of your questions is that you're going, look, let's be practical, right? I just want to be practical. When people say, oh, there shouldn't be any mining, and yet they're protesting on a cell phone, and I go, well, what do you think that cell phone's made out of? It's a little bit along those lines where we just got to do it smart. And it's extraordinary. I've watched the mining industry in my lifetime actually go to where they could do mining with zero net loss of biodiversity. It's extraordinary.
I mean, it is. Face masks became polarized. Pronouns have become polarized. And the truth is, most of us have a logical vein. So I think we all fall into that 80%. So it's a matter of somehow framing things that get us to get along. And I don't know what it is. But Charlie, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate you joining me today. I know Crocky's about to wake up because I know this call was a little earlier for him. So he's about to wake up and he's going to jump on and panic. But can you tell everybody where they can find you, where they can find your book, and maybe even read it and rate it on Amazon?
It's only a paper copy of, the Save Your Drama for Your Mama, but it is a bestseller, so go get it. It's not that expensive. The Path of Light, today you can find it on Kickstarter. Yesterday, our new website, so it has all the various things I'm doing, including the podcast. And Arjuna Therapeutics is our oncology molecule. We will make cancer a manageable disease. So Kickstarter, LinkedIn, I actually did a webinar this morning on LinkedIn. If you want to go see the idea of the drama triangle and the leadership triangle. Human Presence Institute, that's my personal growth.
Like it. Well, Charlie, to maintain your human status, go get some food, get something in your stomach. You made it this far, so this is impressive.
No,
I was always going to pause you in between to say, hey, take a little drink
Should
break.
we take a break?
Food break?
No, this was good. Kind of had me not think about food, but man, something's calling my name.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you for joining us,
Joseph,
Charlie.
What
really
an
appreciate
absolute pleasure. Yeah, no, thank you.
You heard it here, folks. Hostile dysfunction. Until next time.